let's say we want to add a nice realistic shadow behind this icon. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this object, so I can hold down Alt and drag, or I can just copy and paste. And I'm going to send this backward into the layering system. I'm going to first make it a different color so I can tell the difference between the layers. So I'm going to make it a super light gray. I'm switching over to my swatches panel, and I'm going to select this very, very light gray color right here. And I'm going to select this object, right click, and send that all the way to the back. So now it's all the way into the back of the layering system. And I'm going to position it where I think realistic lighting would be cast. So it's going to be a little bit more of an angle. So it's going to be kind of similar to this. And you may like this nice, flat, clean shadow, but I want to add a little bit of a blur effect, so it kind of has a little bit more of a realistic shadow. So I'm going to click on this icon in the back. I'm going to go up to Effect. I'm going to go down to Blur. And we're going to do what's called a Gaussian blur. So this is just going to blur everything a little bit. So you're going to do Gaussian, and make sure you click on Preview to kind of see if you think if it's too harsh or too little. You can go ahead and gauge that. So I'm just going to go ahead and do 7.4, and you notice it kind of casts a nice light shadow. Let's say, oh, that might be too much. How do I go back and change that effect? Well, let's say you can't undo for some reason. I want to go ahead and change that effect. We're going to open what's called the Appearance panel. And this is probably a panel you want to go ahead and permanently add over to the right. So I'm going to open up the Appearance panel. And this is going to show all of the effects that we applied. And all of the effects are up here. This is what we just applied. We just applied a Gaussian blur effect. So if you ever want to go back and change the settings on any of these, you just go to your Appearance panel and it's going to have them listed. So right here for Gaussian blur, I didn't want to blur it quite as much, so let's bring it down a notch. Click OK. Oh, I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and drag my Appearance panel over here. It doesn't matter where, I'm just kind of putting it over there for now because I feel like that's a panel we should probably have open for a while. So I'm going to reduce the gray color just even more to make it a more subtle shadow. So I'm just making it more white. And there we go. I think I'm pretty happy with that. We can export our icon to see if we like it, but let's go ahead and do our whole series and see how we can make all of these have a unifying look and look great on our new website. The next icon we're going to develop is one that's going to show a checkbox or a checklist. So we're going to kind of figure out how we're going to best be able to portray that. So I'm going to start off with a simple square rectangle tool shape. I'm just going to make kind of what I think of a list. I think of a piece of paper with some checkboxes on it and maybe some items. So we're going to create something very similar to that. So I'm just creating a very simple box. I'm going to flip that to a stroke. When I do icon design, I like to kind of do it in black and white sometimes because I can just take color out of it for a minute. So I'm just to switch to maybe a light gray or a black, just kind of a simple neutral color. So I want to make a nice thick lines because when I zoom out, those thin lines are just not going to work. We like nice bold lines with things that are going to be very small. So let's go to our stroke panel. Let's go ahead and bring that out for you. Let's increase the thickness, and it would be nice if all of our icons kind of had a similar thickness or lines to them. So maybe matching the thickness of that line. So maybe about like that. Maybe expanding this as high as we can go to maximize our little icon size, our little 50 by 50 pixel size, or 100 by 100 pixels, whatever the web developer needs it in. Let's do a couple of checkboxes and list, basically making a list. So let's do the same thing. Let's grab a box. Got to hold down Shift so I can make a perfect square. And I'm going to make these a little thinner. So we'll see how many items. This is going to be a small icon, so we don't want to have too much detail. So let's just do 3 simple checkboxes. They're going to go down the side. This is just going to indicate a checkbox icon. Let's say it's for a quiz or to sign up for something. This will be the little icon they see to initiate that response. So what I did right here is I went ahead and selected all 3 icons, and let me go back to where I was. Let me just shift that off a little bit. So when it comes to alignment, I'm going to go ahead and select all 3 of my little boxes here, and I want to align these perfectly to the left. So I'm just going to go up here to my align options, or I have an align panel open, so I can use it here as well. Doesn't matter which one you use. So I'm going to do a horizontal align left, and all of those will be nicely aligned. But I also want to have them aligned where the space here space here and the space here, what if they're different? What if I want to have equal spacing here? Let's say this is off a little bit. I want that gap to be the same as that. So how do we do that? So I'm going to go ahead and select all of our objects. I'm going to make sure I'm left aligned. We've already done that. We're going to go down to Vertical, Distribute, Center. And it's going to go ahead and distribute the same space here that it is here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste and kind of show you this a little bit more so we can really go through alignment in more detail. So let's say it's up here. Make sure we're left aligned, and then I'm going to go down to Vertical, Distribute, Center. And you notice how all of them are changed. So I'm going to do a few more so you can kind of see this more in action. I use this a lot to make sure I have perfect alignment. Not just left and right alignment, but alignment between objects. Let's say these are all over the place. You know, just a mess. We want to make them all evenly distributed. So let's do our left alignment and then just go back to our Vertical, Distribute, Center, and now they're all perfectly aligned. And the same thing works the other way too. Let's say these boxes, I'm going to go take these boxes, Object, I'm just rotating these 90 degrees, or you can manually rotate them. And I'm going to put these out of order. I want to make sure they're all lined up going across. I'm going to select all my objects. I'm going to make sure they're aligned at the bottom. So this is Vertical Align Bottom, or you can do Vertical Align Top. But the spacing between the boxes are not right. So I need to go down here to Horizontal Distribute Center, and it's the same thing as what we did, but it just works for horizontal objects. So this is for vertical objects, and that's for horizontal. Play around with these. Sometimes I click the wrong one. I'm like, oh yeah, that's for vertical. So I still make that mistake. So just play around until you get the right alignment for those. So these are nice and aligned, and let me mess around with the thickness. It probably wouldn't hurt to add a little bit more thickness to there. So now maybe we could do like a little check mark on each box. So let's make a little check mark icon. So we're going to grab our pen tool and do it manually. I believe there's a symbol or an icon where we can just do it automatically, but we're going to do it manually so we can practice. So a check mark. There's a couple ways we can do this. So we could take the pen tool, just click and hold and do like a little shape and make like a really stylized check mark like that. Add a little thickness to it. Maybe round the caps and then round the corner here. So I just did kind of a round join on my stroke. That's kind of stylized. So maybe I don't want the caps, maybe like this, and then I can take the direct selection tool, maybe not have quite a bend there. Here. There's a little tool here we can go ahead and go over called the width tool. And so if you don't see that, you can add that to your toolbar. But I'm just going to quickly go over the width tool. It's not a tool I use a lot, but sometimes if you want to change the thickness in one area of a stroke, but not across the entire stroke, you could just change one part of the thickness. So go ahead and mess around with the width tool. I'm going to go ahead and click this and drag. And I'm able to add a little thickness to the top here. Let's see if I can't do it here. So that it goes from like a thick stroke down to a little tinier stroke. Kind of gives it a little bit of a style. Make it skinnier here. So it doesn't look like it's the same width. It kind of gives it a style. There we go. So there's our little handmade one. We can also do it by tracing the shape ourselves. So let's say we want it very stylized like we were doing, but we just want to draw it. So I'm just taking the pen tool and drawing our own little check mark. Just doing a full complete shape. Let's go ahead and get our direct selection tool and kind of mess with our selections that we just made. All right, so let's make this small and make it green, just so we can have some contrast. Make our little check boxes. I can copy and paste, or I can hold down Alt and drag. So now we want to put some lines or indications that would be text. So I'm just going to make a little fill box here. It would be 2 lines and then a short line to indicate a paragraph. Make sure those are the same thickness. And let's do our align panel. Let's do a left alignment and do a vertical distribute center so that the spacing here is the same here. Okay, great. And we can make this a light gray color. Do it a light gray color to add contrast. Drag this down and drag this down. So we can make sure all of these are the same by clicking all of those little paragraph indications and doing a left alignment. I use alignment a lot, so I'm going to use that a lot. So there's kind of our list icon. So now we just need to zoom out and see how it looks, how it translates when it's smaller. So might be able to reduce the thickness just a tad here. Let's go ahead and zoom out. That's probably the size that you'll see it. So we may need to simplify it a little bit more. But it depends. It depends on how small the icon is going to be. If it's going to be used in infographics, we might be able to get away with this complexity. So now we're going to apply some coloring so we can make sure these icons match and have a similar theme.